Tell me, what if you could live the life of your dreams right now? I made millions by removing things from my house, and it all began with a simple yet profound realization. The environment around me was not just a passive backdrop to my life, but an active participant in shaping my reality. The objects that filled my space were not just things. They were symbols, they were representations of my past beliefs, my past failures, my past limitations. I started to understand that the way I lived, the things I surrounded myself with, was a direct reflection of my inner world, my thoughts, my beliefs, and my feelings. If I wanted to change my reality, I first had to change my environment. And when I began to do that, when I cleared my home, my mind, and my energy, I started to manifest wealth, prosperity, and abundance in ways I had never imagined. The truth is, everything that exists in your world today, in your life, in your environment, was once a thought. That sofa, that chair, those clothes, they didn't just show up by chance. They were created through the thoughts and feelings you had consciously or unconsciously at some point in time. And if you find that your life isn't aligned with the abundance, success, and wealth you desire, it may very well be because your environment is cluttered with old thoughts, old beliefs, and old limitations. Just as your thoughts have created your physical world has the power to influence your thoughts and your beliefs. It's a cycle, a feedback loop that constantly reinforces your beliefs, whether those beliefs are serving you or limiting you. I began my journey of transformation by examining the space I lived in. My home was filled with items that carried emotional weight, memories of past struggles, reminders of things that no longer served me. There were broken things, outdated things, objects that held negative associations. For example, I had clothes in my closet that no longer fit me, literally and metaphorically. These clothes represented the old me, the person I had once been before I had decided to change. I had furniture that was old, worn out, and uncomfortable. Each item, every corner of my house, held a piece of my past, a past that I was no longer interested in living. I started by letting go. I gave away the clothes that no longer fit. I donated the furniture that was outdated. I cleared away objects that had no meaning for my present self or my future aspirations. This wasn't just about tidying up or spring cleaning. This was about clearing out the old mental energy that these objects represented. As I cleared my home, I could feel a shift within me. It was as though I had physically made room for something new, something better, something more aligned with my desires. But here's the crucial part. It wasn't just about removing physical objects. I had to remove the energy attached to them. It wasn't enough to simply declutter my space. I had to change my relationship to everything around me. I had to stop seeing myself as the person who was struggling, the person who didn't have enough, the person who was trying to make it. Instead, I had to begin living as the person who had already achieved success, wealth, and abundance. And that meant I had to stop living with reminders of my past struggles. I had to clear the mental and emotional clutter as well. This wasn't a one-time event, it was a process. Every time I got rid of something in my home, I found myself letting go of an old belief, an old thought, an old fear. Every item I removed represented an old story I had been telling myself. And as I cleared those items away, I began to create space for new stories, new beliefs, and new possibilities. It's a simple law. Your external world is a reflection of your internal state. And if your external world is filled with clutter, disorganization, or old negative energy, it's no wonder that your internal state is also clouded. As I began to clear away the physical clutter, I also began to clear my mind. I started to notice how many limiting beliefs I was holding on to. Beliefs about money, success, and worthiness. I realized that I had been carrying around beliefs that I was not good enough, that success was hard to come by, that wealth was something for other people, not for me. These beliefs, like the old furniture in my home, were weighing me down. They were filling up my mind, taking up valuable space that could be used for new, empowering thoughts and beliefs. So I started to clear those away too. I replaced the old limiting beliefs with new beliefs that supported my vision of success. I told myself, I am worthy of wealth. I am worthy of abundance. Success comes easily to me. I began to shift my thinking from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of abundance. And it wasn't just about thinking these things, it was about feeling them. I began to feel the emotions of success, to embody the person who had already achieved all the wealth I desired. In the process, I found that my external world began to mirror my new internal state. The opportunities I needed to create wealth began to appear. The people I needed to meet came into my life. The ideas I needed flowed effortlessly into my mind. It was as if the universe had cleared a path for me, and all I had to do was walk down it. And it was all because I had removed the physical and mental clutter that was blocking my path to success. You see, the key to manifesting wealth and abundance isn't about working harder or striving more. It's about aligning your internal state with the desires you wish to create. When you clear away the things that no longer serve you, when you remove the beliefs that limit you, you create space for the things you truly desire to enter your life. Your home, your environment, and your mind become a reflection of your new empowered self, a self that is worthy of wealth, success, and all the good things life has to offer. By removing the things from my house, both physical and mental, I opened myself up to a new reality, a reality where abundance flowed freely and easily. And that's how I made millions, by clearing the clutter, by letting go of the old, and by making space for the new. The process was not just about cleaning my house, it was about cleaning my life and my mindset. It was about creating a space, both within and without, where success could take root and grow. And that, my friends, is the secret to manifesting the life of your dreams. The truth is, we are all creators of our reality, and the only thing standing between us and the life we desire is the internal belief system we carry. I began to understand that the world around me, the life I was living, was simply a reflection of the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that I had been carrying for years. For much of my life, I had been living in a state of limitation, believing that wealth, success, and happiness were things I had to chase after, things that were outside of myself. But as I began to examine my thoughts and feelings, I realized that the key to manifesting wealth was not about striving or working harder, but about changing the way I thought and felt about money, success, and abundance. I began to recognize that money and success were not elusive forces that I had to fight to attract. Rather, they were energies that were already available to me. The problem wasn't the lack of these things in the universe, but my own perception of them. I had to shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. And the way I did this was by constantly changing my internal dialogue and assuming the feeling of already having what I desired. Our assumptions are powerful forces that shape our lives, often without us even realizing it. The assumption that wealth is something distant or difficult to attain will keep you stuck in a cycle of limitation. But the moment you begin to assume that you are worthy of wealth, that money flows to you easily and effortlessly, you begin to align your energy with abundance. I had to stop believing that wealth was a result of external circumstances or luck. I had to stop thinking that success was for other people, not for me. I had to adopt a new belief that wealth and success were my birthright, and all I had to do was accept them. It's not enough to simply want something. You must assume that it is already yours. This is where the power of imagination comes in. I began to vividly imagine myself living the life I wanted. I would close my eyes and picture myself in the lifestyle I desired: luxurious surroundings, financial freedom, opportunities flowing my way with ease. I imagined how I would feel once I had achieved all the success I desired. I felt the emotions of living that reality even before it existed in my physical world. This is the key. Feeling is the secret. It's not just about imagining your success. It's about embodying the feelings associated with that success right now. I would feel the gratitude, the excitement, the joy of already being successful. And what I discovered was that by feeling these emotions, I was aligning my inner world with the outer world I wanted to create. The more I practiced this, the more I began to see shifts in my life. Opportunities that once seemed out of reach suddenly became accessible. I began to attract the right people, the right situations, and the right opportunities to manifest the wealth I imagined. I realized that the universe does not respond to your wishes, but to your feelings, to your state of being. At the beginning, it felt strange to live in the assumption that wealth was already mine. My circumstances hadn't changed yet, and it was hard not to notice the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be. But I learned to stay persistent. The external world would always reflect the internal world, and as I continued to assume the feeling of abundance, my outer reality began to shift. I stopped doubting the process, stopped questioning whether I was deserving of wealth, and instead, I just lived as if it was already true. Living in the assumption of wealth didn't mean that I stopped working. It meant that I worked with the knowing that I was already prosperous. I took inspired actions, but I didn't attach myself to the results. I knew that my internal state, my feeling of already having what I desired, would bring the external results into my life. I learned to trust in the power of my assumptions, knowing that the law of attraction, this universal law that governs all of creation, was always at work, even when I couldn't see the evidence immediately. I also started to notice that my internal dialogue had shifted. Where once I would have worried about money or been afraid of failure, I now spoke to myself in a way that was aligned with my new reality. I would affirm, I am worthy of abundance. Money flows to me effortlessly. Success is inevitable. I repeated these affirmations daily, not as a way of forcing the outcome, but as a way of reinforcing my new belief system. Every time I said these words, I felt the truth of them seep into my being. Slowly, the old beliefs that kept me stuck in scarcity, began to fall away, replaced by the new, empowering assumptions that aligned with the wealth I wanted to create. Through that empowering, as I continued to practice the power of assumption, I began to realize that the process wasn't just about attracting things. It was about becoming the person who naturally attracts abundance. It was about changing who I was at the core. I had to become the version of myself who was worthy of wealth, the version of myself who thought, felt, and acted in alignment with abundance. And the more I assumed that I was that person, the more the world around me shifted to reflect it. I didn't wait for wealth to come before I began living as though I was already wealthy. I began to act with confidence, to make decisions from a place of abundance, not fear. I started to trust my intuition more, to follow opportunities that aligned with my new beliefs. And as I did, my external circumstances began to change. Money flowed into my life more easily. I began to attract opportunities that seemed like coincidences, but were actually the natural result of my new mindset. What I learned through this process is that the law of assumption works relentlessly. It doesn't matter where you are right now or how difficult your situation may seem. The law of assumption operates according to your belief system. If you assume that success and abundance are yours, and if you feel the emotions of having already achieved them, you must eventually see them in your physical world. It is inevitable. This is not magic or chance. This is the power of your own mind. The thoughts you hold, the assumptions you make, are shaping your reality every single day. And the moment you change those assumptions, your reality begins to change too. We all have the power to manifest the life we desire. It starts with changing the way we think, feel, and believe. By assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you align yourself with the abundant universe that is already waiting to pour its blessings into your life. I learned that the key to manifesting true wealth success, and abundance wasn't about working harder, struggling, or waiting for things to magically fall into place. It was about shifting my mindset and adjusting my perceptions of what I deserved and what was available to me. I began to see that the most important part of my transformation was not external circumstances, but the thoughts and assumptions I held in my mind. In particular, I discovered that what I had been holding on to, especially the relationships I had in my life, were playing a massive role in my ability to manifest the life I desired. The relationships you nurture have an incredible impact on your ability to create abundance. It's something that many people overlook, but the people you spend your time with shape your energy, your beliefs, and ultimately your reality. The idea that you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with is a truth that I came to deeply understand. If the people around you are constantly speaking of limitations, scarcity, and doubt, that energy will seep into your own thoughts and beliefs. It wasn't until I recognized this truth and began to evaluate the people in my life that I realized just how many toxic relationships I had been holding on to. Relationships that were actively limiting my potential for success and wealth. I had relationships with individuals who doubted my dreams, who spoke of the difficulties of life, and who lived in a state of constant fear and insecurity. While they were wonderful people in many ways, their energies were not aligned with the vision I had for my life. I could see that every time I spent time with them, I was reinforcing the idea that life was hard, that success was difficult, and that wealth was not easily attainable. These relationships, whether I realized it or not, were subtly influencing my belief system. I was carrying their limiting beliefs and fears with me, and that was preventing me from moving forward. When I realized this, I knew I had to make a change. I had to begin distancing myself from those who were not supporting my vision of success. But this wasn't just about cutting people out of my life. It was about reevaluating my own beliefs and assumptions about success and abundance. I had to ask myself, what kind of people do I need in my life to align with my vision of wealth? The answer was simple. I needed to surround myself with individuals who believed in abundance, who saw wealth and success as things that were readily available to everyone, and who shared my vision of a prosperous future. So I consciously began to seek out people who supported my dreams, who encouraged me to think bigger, and who believed that success was within reach. I began to spend more time with individuals who had already achieved the kind of success I desired. I sought out mentors, friends, and colleagues who embodied the mindset of abundance and who inspired me to think beyond my current circumstances. And as I did this, something incredible happened. My mindset shifted. I began to adopt the beliefs of those around me. Their thoughts, their actions, and their energy became a reflection of my own. By surrounding myself with people who supported and encouraged my vision of wealth, I started to feel more confident, more inspired, and more empowered. I realized that success was not a distant dream, but a reality that was available to me in this moment. These new relationships helped me change the way I viewed the world. I started to understand that success wasn't something that was only for certain people. It was for everyone who was willing to believe in it, assume it, and live it. By spending time with those who had a positive, abundance-oriented mindset, I began to adopt the same mindset. It became clear to me that my environment was more than just my physical surroundings. It was the people who surrounded me too. Just as I had made the choice to remove physical clutter from my home, I now realized I had to remove the mental clutter created by toxic relationships. I had to clear out the doubts, fears, and limitations that others were unintentionally placing on me. The more I surrounded myself with people who lived with a mindset of possibility, the more I found myself naturally embodying those same beliefs. And it wasn't just about seeking out people who were already successful. It was also about learning to be selective with my time and energy. I became more conscious of the conversations I participated in. I chose to avoid discussions about lack, fear, or scarcity. Instead, I gravitated toward conversations about growth, opportunity, and success. I surrounded myself with people who were solution-oriented, who saw challenges as opportunities for growth rather than as insurmountable obstacles. As I began to change the people I spent time with, I also began to change my own internal dialogue. The words I spoke to myself became more positive and aligned with the success I desired. I no longer doubted my potential or believed that wealth was something for others. I began to believe that I was deserving of all the success, abundance, and prosperity the world had to offer. I spoke to myself with the same encouragement and support that I was now receiving from those around me. I told myself that wealth was already on its way, that opportunities were all around me, and that I was worthy of everything I desired. This shift in my internal and external relationships brought about profound changes in my life. I started to attract new opportunities that I had previously thought were out of my reach. I began to see more abundance flowing into my life, not just in terms of money, but in opportunities, relationships, and experiences. By clearing out toxic relationships and aligning myself with people who believed in abundance, I was able to tap into the limitless potential that the universe offers to those who are willing to believe in it. The key takeaway here is that the people you allow into your life play an incredibly important role in your success. They influence your beliefs, your mindset, and your reality. If you want to manifest abundance, you need to surround yourself with people who share your vision, who lift you up, and who inspire you to be the best version of yourself. The energy you share with others is contagious, and by choosing to spend time with those who radiate positivity and success, you will begin to reflect that same energy in your own life. Ultimately, the relationships we nurture either support our growth or hold us back. The people around us shape our mindset, our energy, and our actions. By clearing out the toxic relationships and replacing them with people who align with our vision of success, we are making a conscious choice to shift our lives in the direction of abundance and prosperity. This is not just about finding the right people, it's about becoming the right person who attracts those people into your life. The relationships you have will either support or hinder your dreams. So choose wisely and make sure they reflect the person you are becoming. I came to realize that everything we want to manifest in our lives begins with an assumption, a belief that what we desire is already ours. The most powerful realization I had in the process of manifesting wealth, success, and abundance was that our imagination is the most potent tool we have at our disposal. It is not something to be taken lightly, for imagination is the seed of creation. The world around us, the reality we experience every single day, is not merely a series of random events or circumstances. It is the direct result of our inner world, shaped by our imagination, assumptions, and beliefs. I learned that wealth, just like everything else, begins in the mind. In my journey to manifest financial freedom, I understood that the most important thing was not simply to wish for abundance, but to assume that it was already mine. The power of imagination lies in the ability to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, to live as if the desired outcome is already a reality before it has physically manifested. When you truly believe and assume the reality of your desires, you begin to align your mind, your emotions, and your actions with the frequency of those desires, and they must eventually come into your life. At first, it was difficult to fully embrace this idea. It's not easy to live as though something you desire is already yours when your current reality may suggest otherwise. But I came to understand that my current reality was simply a reflection of past assumptions and beliefs. The moment I shifted my focus from what was to what could be, I began to experience a transformation in my circumstances. The imagination is the bridge between the present and the future you want to create. And it is only by living in the assumption of that future that you open the door to its manifestation. To manifest wealth, success, or anything else, You must feel the emotions of already having it. This was one of the most pivotal lessons I learned. Wealth is not something to be attained in the future. It must be experienced now, in the present moment, through your thoughts and feelings. The key is to embrace the feelings of abundance, gratitude, and joy as though they are already part of your reality. When I began to assume the feeling of having financial freedom, I realized that the more I felt it, the more I attracted it. The feeling of abundance is magnetic. By embodying the emotions of wealth, I found that the opportunities, people, and resources I needed to create that wealth began to appear effortlessly in my life. The imagination isn't just about visualizing the end goal. It's about living in the feeling of that goal, allowing yourself to experience what it would be like to already have it. I vividly imagined what it would feel like to have financial freedom, to live in abundance, to have the ability to help others, and to experience a life of luxury and peace. I didn't just imagine it for a few moments each day and then go back to thinking about my current lack. No, I practiced it continuously. I made it my primary focus. Every time I thought about my financial situation or future, I reminded myself to feel the emotions of already having the wealth I desired. I became so immersed in these feelings that it was as though my current reality had no choice but to change. Through this practice, I began to see shifts in my life that were nothing short of miraculous. Opportunities that had once seemed beyond my reach suddenly became available. People began to come into my life who were aligned with my vision of success. The more I focused on the assumption of wealth, the more my outer world began to match my inner world. It was as if the universe was responding to my new beliefs and assumptions, bringing my desires into physical reality. The key here is consistency. The process is not about occasional bursts of positive thinking or momentary daydreams of success. It's about living in the assumption that what you want is already yours and maintaining that assumption no matter what your present circumstances may say. You must persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, even if the evidence around you suggests otherwise. Your imagination and assumptions are far more powerful than your current situation. The moment you begin to feel the emotions of having what you desire, you begin to change your inner state, and your outer world will follow suit. One of the most transformative experiences for me was realizing that the more I embraced the feeling of abundance and success, the more my life began to reflect that. As I made the assumption that wealth was already part of my reality, I noticed subtle but powerful changes in how I thought and acted. I no longer felt desperate for money or success. Instead, I began to act from a place of calm certainty, knowing that I was already living the life I desired. Living in the assumption of your desired reality means fully committing to the idea that the future you want is already here in the present moment. This is not about wishful thinking or hoping for something to happen. It's about having unwavering faith that your desires are already a part of your life, even if you cannot yet see them in the physical world. The moment you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you begin to shift your consciousness to match that reality. Your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions all begin to align with the assumption that wealth, success, and abundance are already yours. It's important to remember that the power of imagination and assumption works on a deep, subconscious level. You don't need to understand the how or when of your desires manifesting. You simply need to trust in the process and know that by living in the assumption that your desires are already yours, they will manifest in their perfect time. This is where true faith comes in, trusting that your assumptions are creating your reality, even when you can't see the physical evidence of it yet. Imagination is the creative power that shapes our world. Every thought, every assumption, every feeling is creating our reality. When you assume the feeling of having already achieved your goal, your external reality must shift to reflect that. The more vividly and consistently you can assume the feeling of wealth and success, the more your life will align with those feelings. Your imagination is not a passive tool. It is the force that creates your world. When you embrace the assumption that your desires are already fulfilled, you are tapping into the infinite creative power that exists within you. Living in the assumption of your desired reality is a game changer. It is the key to manifesting anything you want: wealth, success, health, happiness, or anything else. The moment you assume the feeling of having what you desire, you align yourself with the flow of abundance and open the door to limitless possibilities. The imagination is the most powerful tool at your disposal, and by using it to assume the feeling of your wishes fulfilled, you begin to shape your reality in ways that once seemed impossible. I learned that to truly manifest wealth and success, the key is not to wait for the world around you to change in order for you to feel abundant. Instead, the process begins within you. It starts with changing how you perceive the world and how you perceive yourself. The moment I began to embrace the idea that success and wealth were not things to be chased, but experiences that I could embody right now, my entire reality began to shift. The law of assumption tells us that we must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and live from that assumption as if it were already true. This principle was one of the most powerful lessons in my life, because I realized that everything I desired, whether it was wealth, freedom, or success, was already mine. I simply needed to believe it, feel it, and live as though it were already my present reality. The law of assumption teaches that our outer world reflects the beliefs and assumptions we hold deep within us. In the past, I had always believed that my circumstances determined my success. I thought that I had to work hard, prove myself, and wait for the right time for success to appear. But when I realized that my assumptions about the world were actually shaping my reality, everything changed. I understood that I didn't have to wait for success to show up before I could feel successful. I didn't need external validation to believe in my own worth. The key was to start living as though I already possessed what I desired, regardless of what was happening in the physical world. As I began to live in the assumption of the wish fulfilled, I noticed something remarkable happening. The people, situations, and opportunities I needed to manifest wealth and success started to show up in my life. It was as if the universe was responding to my assumptions and bringing everything into alignment. But this wasn't a passive process. I had to actively assume the state of having what I wanted, to embody the emotions of already being wealthy and successful. I practiced living in that state every day, regardless of my current circumstances. At first, it was difficult. It felt unnatural to act as though I already had what I desired, when I could still see the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be. But this is where the true power lies. Living in the assumption of the wish fulfilled means choosing to live from a place of certainty, regardless of the evidence around you. It's not about waiting for things to change in order to feel wealthy. It's about choosing to feel wealthy right now. The more I assumed the feeling of success, the more I became a magnet for the very things I was trying to manifest. The assumption of the wish fulfilled works in every area of life. It doesn't just apply to wealth. It applies to every desire you have. If you want love, happiness, health, or success, the law of assumption works the same way. You must live in the assumption that what you want is already yours. You must feel it, believe it, and act as if it is already a part of your life. When I began living in the assumption of wealth, it wasn't just about imagining the money coming into my life. It was about feeling the emotions of what that wealth would bring, the security, the freedom, the peace of mind. The more I felt these emotions, the more they began to manifest in my reality. This is not a process of tricking your mind or pretending. It's a process of aligning yourself with the truth of who you really are. When you assume the feeling of already having what you desire, you are not pretending to be someone you're not. You are simply remembering and embodying the person you already are. Deep down, we all know that we are worthy of the things we desire. We know that wealth, success, love, and health are all within our reach. But the key is to stop waiting for them to appear and to start living as though they already exist in your world. The more I practiced the law of assumption, the more I began to see the world shift around me. Opportunities started to present themselves. I started to see doors opening where I had previously seen only walls. It was as if everything was aligning perfectly with the assumptions I held about myself and my life. The truth is, our assumptions create our experiences, and once I understood that, everything started to change. One of the most powerful aspects of living in the assumption of the wish fulfilled is that it shifts your mindset from a place of lack to a place of abundance. When you live from a mindset of abundance, you naturally begin to attract more of what you desire. You stop seeing the world as a place of scarcity, where opportunities are limited and success is hard to come by. Instead, you see the world as full of endless possibilities, where everything you need is already on its way to you. This shift in mindset is crucial. For so long, I had been caught up in the belief that success was something outside of myself, something I had to work for and earn. But as I began to live in the assumption that success was already mine, I began to attract more success. I stopped seeing success as something I had to struggle to attain, and instead I saw it as something that was always available to me, just waiting for me to claim it. Living in the assumption of the wish fulfilled also requires trust. You must trust that what you desire is already on its way to you, even when you can't see the evidence of it yet. This is where faith comes in. Faith is not just believing in something that hasn't happened yet. It is living in the certainty that it will happen, even if you can't yet see how. When you trust the process and live from the assumption that your desires are already on their way, you allow the universe to deliver them to you in the perfect way and at the perfect time. When I fully embraced the power of assumption, I realized that I didn't need to control the outcome. I didn't need to figure out the how or the when. All I had to do was live in the assumption of my desires and trust that everything would unfold as it should. This brought me peace. It took away the stress and the struggle of trying to make things happen. I no longer had to chase after success. I simply had to live as if it was already mine. Living in the assumption of the wish fulfilled is the key to manifesting anything you desire. It is the foundation of creating a life of abundance, success, and wealth. By consistently assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you align your thoughts, emotions, and actions with the reality you wish to create. The world around you will begin to mirror those assumptions, and everything you desire will flow effortlessly into your life. The law of assumption is not just a concept. It is a way of life, a way of living from a place of certainty, abundance, and trust in the process of creation. And once you master this, you will find that nothing is impossible for you to achieve. I discovered that one of the most profound shifts I made on my journey to manifesting wealth and success was understanding that our beliefs, our inner world, are the true creators of our outer reality. I had always been taught that success and wealth were external factors, things that depended on luck, timing, or circumstances outside of my control. But as I began to understand the deep underlying principle that the outside world is simply a reflection of the inner world, I realized that wealth was not something I had to strive for or work hard to earn. Instead, wealth, success, and abundance were the natural result of the assumptions, beliefs, and feelings I held within myself. This is when I understood the power of the environment. The environment you create around you, whether it is physical, emotional, or mental, directly influences your ability to attract the success and wealth you desire. The environment we live in is not just a neutral space. It is a mirror reflecting our thoughts, our beliefs, and the energy we radiate. When I started to look at my environment through this lens, I saw that there were many things I was holding on to that no longer served me. These were things that symbolized my past struggles, my fears, and my doubts. The more I looked around, the more I realized that everything in my space had meaning. Everything I owned, everything I kept, was speaking to me and reinforcing the story I had been telling myself. One of the first things I did was begin to clear out the clutter from my physical space. I got rid of objects that carried negative associations or that were reminders of past failures. These objects were not just things, they were energetic anchors, weighing me down and keeping me tethered to the past. I began to clear my home of items that no longer reflected the person I was becoming, the person who was worthy of wealth and success. It was not just about tidying up or throwing away things. It was about creating space for the new life I wanted to create. I knew that in order to invite in abundance and success, I had to make room for it in my space and in my mind. As I cleared away the old, I felt lighter, freer, and more open to receiving. At the same time, I began to pay closer attention to my mental and emotional environment. I realized that just as my physical surroundings were influencing me, my inner world, my thoughts, my beliefs, and my emotions were shaping the reality I was experiencing. I had to ask myself, what beliefs am I holding on to that are keeping me from experiencing the wealth I desire? What old stories am I telling myself that are keeping me stuck in a mindset of lack? These were tough questions to ask, but they were necessary ones. I had to be honest with myself about the limiting beliefs I had been carrying, beliefs that success was hard to come by, that I wasn't worthy of abundance, or that I needed to work relentlessly to earn money. It was through this deep self-reflection that I began to understand that wealth is not something external, something to be earned through struggle. Wealth is a reflection of my state of being. It is the energy I radiate and the thoughts I choose to entertain. The more I chose to believe in abundance, the more abundance showed up in my life. But this required a radical shift. I couldn't just think positive thoughts and hope for the best. I had to feel, live, and embody the state of wealth. I had to assume the feeling of already being wealthy and abundant, regardless of what was happening in my external world. I started by visualizing myself living the life I wanted. I imagined the freedom, the opportunities, and the ease that came with being financially secure. I saw myself helping others, living without worry and experiencing the joy of living in abundance. But visualization wasn't enough. It wasn't just about imagining the wealth I wanted. It was about feeling the emotions associated with that wealth. Every time I visualized my success, I focused on how it would feel to live that life. I felt the gratitude, the excitement, the sense of fulfillment that would come with achieving everything I desired. And the more I practiced this, the more real it became. One of the most important lessons I learned was that the environment you create in your mind and heart is just as crucial as the physical space you live in. Your beliefs, thoughts, and emotions are constantly shaping your reality, just as your physical environment is. If you want to change your life, you must start by changing your inner environment. This is not a quick fix or a one-time exercise. It is a continuous process of aligning your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions with the life you wish to create. And as you do this, the physical world around you will begin to shift. I also realized that the people I surrounded myself with played a key role in the environment I was creating. We are deeply influenced by the people we spend the most time with, the conversations we have, the energy we share, and the beliefs we adopt from others shape our reality. When I looked at the people in my life, I noticed that some of them were reinforcing the very limitations I was trying to overcome. I realized that in order to truly manifest the life I wanted, I had to start surrounding myself with people who shared my vision of abundance and success. I needed to spend time with people who believed that wealth was available to everyone and who supported my growth. This was not about cutting people out of my life, but about consciously choosing to spend my time with those who would help me grow and align with my desires. Once I shifted the environment I was living in, physically, mentally, and emotionally, things started to change. Opportunities that had once seemed out of reach began to show up. The people I needed to meet appeared. I started to feel more confident in my ability to create the life I wanted, and my external world began to reflect that confidence. My wealth, success, and abundance were no longer distant dreams. They were becoming my reality. The key was that I had finally created the right environment within myself and around me. I had cleared out the clutter, removed the limiting beliefs, and surrounded myself with people who supported my vision. And when I did that, the universe responded in kind. What I came to understand is that the environment you create is everything. It is the fertile ground in which your dreams are planted. The external world, whether it is the physical space you live in or the people you interact with, will either support your growth or limit it. If you want to manifest the life you desire, you must first create the right environment, internally and externally. By aligning your thoughts, feelings, and surroundings with the life you wish to create, you set in motion the forces that will bring that life to you. The power of the environment is the power of creation. By changing your inner and outer worlds, you change your reality. And once you master this, you will find that anything is possible. In conclusion, what I have shared with you today is not just a set of techniques or strategies for manifesting wealth and success, but rather a fundamental shift in how we view the world and ourselves. The journey to manifesting the life we desire begins within us, through the beliefs, assumptions, and feelings we hold about ourselves and the world around us. Our thoughts are not passive. They are creative forces that shape the reality we experience. By consciously choosing to align our inner world with the abundance, success, and wealth we seek, we tap into the infinite potential that resides within us. As I cleared the clutter from my physical space, let go of limiting beliefs, and surrounded myself with those who supported my vision, I created an environment that allowed prosperity to flow into my life. The more I assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the more I began to see tangible changes in my world. It wasn't about waiting for the perfect circumstances to align before taking action. It was about living as if what I desired was already mine and allowing my actions to reflect that certainty. The environment you create, both internally and externally, holds the power to shape your reality. The people you spend time with, the beliefs you hold, and the actions you take all contribute to the world you experience. By making conscious choices to nurture your mind, clear your space, and align yourself with your desires, you begin to attract everything you need to manifest your dreams. Remember, success and wealth are not distant, unattainable goals. They are the natural result of assuming the feeling of already having them. You are not waiting for the universe to deliver. You are creating your reality from within. And once you embrace this power, you will find that there are no limits to what you can achieve. Your dreams are not only possible, they are inevitable.